Hi, this is Kara. Welcome to Breaking Free Fridays, or welcome back if you've been following the series. It's great to have you here. Today I was inspired to talk about the cost of bad body fuel. And what was the impetus behind this was actually this weekend, we as a family are celebrating a few different really special birthdays. My mom, my cousin, and my aunt, all within a few days of each other. And so my daughter and I were making a homemade German chocolate cake. And we have for a long time not been eating gluten, soy, dairy, or refined sugar. And oftentimes people think of that as being so restrictive, and yet there are ways of making incredible food that really nourishes and fuels us, and that can even be really incredible treats and things to celebrate. And I'll just share a picture of the cake that we made tonight. Anyway, so one of the reasons that I wanted to bring this up, and I'm so passionate about this, is we live in a time in a world where convenience reigns king in so many cases. And oftentimes the cost of convenience means things that we're putting into our body in the attempt of nourishing it, but it's actually really causing harm and barely even fueling it. And the food industry in general is not particularly our friend in terms of its marketing and, trying to really appeal to people's taste buds, as opposed to their just our inherent natures and the miracle that our body is. So I don't know if you've heard this quote before, but I love it. It's let food be thy medicine. And this is a quote that Hippocrates said, who was an ancient Greek physician, considered the father of medicine. And it is so true. What we eat makes an immense amount of difference in our health and well-being. And one of the things in my own health journey, and I've been through a few different pretty significant health crises, and a lot of the food choices, they started out not by choice. I had some really debilitating health diagnoses and situations that were connected to food. And I was shocked to find that, because I actually was a person that really thought I had always eaten healthy. And this is one of the things that's so important to realize is we can be easily deceived around the kinds of foods that we eat. Right now, there are about 33 million Americans with food allergies. And that's on the extreme spectrum, where you're talking about anaphylactic reaction. And then we go to the whole other end of, middle of the spectrum, where you're dealing with food intolerances. And the other extreme where it's sensitivities. And then you also have things like immune diseases in the mix of all of this, like celiac disease. And your body will actually attack itself if you get exposed to gluten, which, if you're not familiar, gluten is in wheat, barley, rye. It's also in oats, because it's cross-contaminated unless they are actually certified gluten-free. So there are so many different facets to this. And one of the reasons that I share this is because when I first realized that I had to go gluten-free for my health and well-being, and I was so unbelievably sick and weak and in debilitating pain at the time, I was willing to do anything to feel better, to get my life back. And I remember going into the grocery store the first time, after being diagnosed. And, this was decades ago. And I was like a deer in the headlights, trying to navigate, figuring out what had gluten and examining the food labels. And it was so overwhelming. And I was just completely flabbergasted by how confusing all of the labels and the things that I used to think that I ate that were healthy. And it was all food marketing, promoting natural and healthy and low fat and things like this. And it turned out that there were so many other ways that what I was eating wasn't healthy at all. Not even just aside from the fact that a lot of things had gluten, but just how processed things were, or, chemicals or preservatives or things like that actually are toxins in our system. And, our body, when it gets filled up enough with that, it can have a difficult time releasing that and keeping pace with what we continually put in that maybe isn't great for us. So that's the thing about the fuel, right? Because the more that we nourish ourselves in a way that really fuels us, that really, brings that energy and that aliveness in, I mean, that is just game changing. I mean, that brings our own ability to really enjoy life and engage in being active and healing. Food, it truly is healing in so many different ways. And navigating this can be tricky, especially if you're, in a place where there's a lot of different health factors going on. I know it took a lot of time for me to rebalance my system and quite frankly, detox from different foods. And it's different for each person. It's different for different bodies, what can be tolerated or not tolerated. And there are certain things that are just generally considered, more challenging for consumption and for our bodies to process, just, in general. Foods that are considered really inflammatory, that can create heightened immune response in the system, that can actually make things more conducive for our bodies to maladapt. And in essence, that's just referring to, us as being in more disease states or being more susceptible to, viruses or bugs of different kinds. And, one of the things that is really fascinating, there have been a few different studies done over the years that actually have suggested that sugar is more addictive than cocaine, in just studies that have been done with like lab rats and mice and things like that. And you would be shocked if you start really looking at labels in your food of how many different things sugar is put in, or gluten is put in, or other kinds of fillers, or other kinds of preservatives, or dyes, or things that we just aren't, really meant to eat, or definitely not in the quantities that they're being snuck in to food. And so I encourage you, just for fun, take your next grocery trip as like this opportunity for investigation, and look at the things that you normally buy and you normally eat, and see if you are surprised by some of what is actually in the food. There's a common thing that people talk about in terms of navigating grocery stores and, keeping to the outer edges and really more of those whole foods, minimizing or eliminating, processed foods. And it's really fascinating if you kind of go from an investigatory standpoint and you explore the grocery store and look at how things are presented and marketed and the different types of foods that we tend to lean towards, maybe out of comfort or convenience. And I can tell you, one of the things that's so fascinating when you go from, eating some of these types of foods on a regular basis and you clear some of them out of your lifestyle. And I choose lifestyle as opposed to diet because it's really not about a diet. It's about a lifestyle. It's about fueling ourselves from a standpoint of really upping our health and well-being. And not just for now, but for a life that is filled with a lot of quality living and longevity. Because that's what it's about, right? Really enjoying and being able to be present in life. And, some people will say, well, I really love these things. I love these foods or these drinks or whatnot. Why do I want to give that up? Because that feels like a sacrifice that compromises my quality of life. And then you might want to consider and ask yourself and really reflect on what is it that makes up your best life, and what are the attributes of that. And maybe there's a moderation of certain things that aren't like the ideal foods, but overall, if you're fueling yourself with more nourishing foods, more whole foods, things that really sustain you, you'll have more energy, you'll feel more active, your health will be better. Things that have been eluding you, that you have been trying to heal from, it will come more easily because your body will be able to be in more of a recalibrated and balanced state. And our bodies are designed to heal themselves. We just create things that make it hard for the body to do that particular thing. And fueling us with the right food can start to make all the difference. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this. If you've been in this journey already or have been dabbling with it or have questions about it, let me know. Share in the comments below. And if you're enjoying these videos, please share them and spread them to your friends, your loved ones. Subscribe, send a like, and here's to your next level of empowerment and breaking free. I hope you have a great week, and bye for now.